First, I'd like to welcome a frequent guest on Fred Hampton's Leftist, as well as someone who's involved in a lot of VOP projects. We have Jackie, and then later on, we're going to be inviting our scheduling manager, as well as all-around great person, Ace, to the show. So welcome to all of them, and welcome to all of my audience and viewers. Thank you for coming on tonight. Tonight, we have a few issues to talk about. We have the healthcare issue over in New York, where the National Guard is now manning hospitals due to unvaccinated healthcare workers. As well as that, we have more groups of people coming up from the border into the United States. Who knows if there's any vaccination status on them, as well as talks of an energy tax where people are going to be taxed on miles if their cars are non-electric. Stick around, you're not going to want to miss tonight. As we go forward with President Biden and his administration, they're definitely putting an emphasis on the all-around good of the American people. And that is something I totally respect. I want to make sure everyone's good. But at to what cost of the individual does that show? Here we have, mileage tax, this big thing that's been boggling my brain all week, that I understand you want people to be driving less on the road using cars that emit harsh fumes. But can the average working class American right now afford an electric car, a Tesla? What is the cheapest electric car? How many American lower to middle class workers can just sell their car and get a brand new Tesla or other electric vehicle? Are hybrids on this list? Would hybrids give you less taxes on miles, or does it all count the same? To me, this doesn't seem very, very genuine. It feels like this is just another way to squeeze tax dollars out of the American worker under the guise of climate change. Now, I'm all for a clean planet. Everyone knows that. How often do I talk about nuclear power on the show, and how if we went nuclear, it would solve a ton of problems in the United States. But unfortunately, since we have all of these lobbies, all of these people in the pockets of oil and petrol, we won't ever be able to fully experience what nuclear is, which is a darn shame. And I know the counter arguments, and I can hear them in the comments now. Hey, what about nuclear meltdowns? What about radiation sickness and poisoning? Do you know how many radioactive meltdowns there have been in the United States of America? Zero. Everyone is always concerned over Fukushima and Chernobyl, which are valid concerns. It's never a bad thing to be concerned over the safety and well-being of the people in this country. But when you have these nuclear giants in countries that don't have OSHA, don't have work standards, are more concerned with quotas than worker safety, you're going to have more accidents that result in casualties and fatalities. Now, I'm not saying America is the perfect workers' union paradise, but it does have OSHA. It does have standards. People can blow a whistle and not get thrown into jail for exposing how their boss treats them in the office. And the same thing can be done for nuclear plants in this country. If we're able to establish all kinds of nuclear power, we can power a lot of people's homes for a very tiny amount of nuclear waste in the form of the pellets that was radioactive. It looks like we are about to have our first visitor. Jackie, I'm ready for you if you want to come on by.
Hello. Why am
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
This is weird. Okay, that's...
There you are. You just have to come the other way.
Anyway. Hi.
Hey, what's going on? Thank you for coming by the show today.
Thanks for having me. One quick correction. I wasn't a frequent guest of the Fred Hampton Leftist. I was an original member. Even better. I left. So...
Okay. I apologies for the misinformation. I didn't realize we had semi-royalty on the show. Thank you for coming on by.
Not royalty, not even remotely. But yeah, so you're discussing clean energy?
Yeah, clean energy, the basic climate crisis. How would you handle something like that? What do you think that the Biden administration, with this new mileage tax, with ending U.S. energy independence in exchange for foreign oil. Do you think that's doing a net good for climate change, or do you think that there should be a whole new approach altogether, like I do?
No, yeah, this is not gonna solve shit except make people pay more in taxes.
Mm-hmm.
This is not like, if you really wanted to handle climate change, let's face it, when it comes to the real danger of climate change, the cars that are on the road are just a fraction of the problem. The real
Mm-hmm.
problem, see, this is the problem with politics in general. They keep going after things that basically affect people to make it look like, see, we did something, while they're actively not doing anything. Because in order for
Thank you.
them to do something, they need to actually go after the corporations that are doing,
Absolutely.
I think like 80% of climate change comes from like 100 corporations. Go
Yes,
after
I
them.
remember hearing that statistic. Yes, I know
Like
there are
making us
corporations
pay
that are
10 cents for a
unregulated.
plastic bag, or not paying,
Mm-hmm.
not using plastic straws. That's not doing shit. We need to realize, like, why are so many plastic things being created if we don't have a way to get rid of them? Why don't we just change to something else? Or why don't we find a way to handle it, if, since we have this non-biodegradable material, maybe there's a better way we can deal with it. But we're ignoring the actual problem and just taxing the little people, while
Mm-hmm.
that way they can clap themselves on the back and say, see, I did something.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on that stance. With these corporations pumping out plastic like it's nobody's business, as well as other countries like China and India throwing smog out and graying their own skies. In China, it's almost a permanent overcast. I know this is an old statistic because we're in 2021, which makes me feel old. But back in 2008, when the Beijing Olympics were in, the Summer Olympics were in Beijing, they had to stop all factory production in that square for months ahead of time, so that way the smog can clear from the sky. And we
Yeah,
have
when it
countries
comes
that
to
are
China,
doing that.
though, we have to
Hmm.
realize that until recently, the US was shipping our garbage to China for them to destroy. So it's not all China. It's also
Okay.
the US that is being handled in China. And then on top of that, China has literally a billion people, which is more than, it's almost 3 times what the US has. And even with the fact that they have almost 3 times as many people, we're like, on top of that, we were sending them our garbage. So I'm not saying that they're doing great, but I'm saying, like, these things, they did reduce since 2008, because you were absolutely right. But since then, they have drastically reduced their carbon footprint. Whereas, did the US reduce it? Nope. The only way the US does things like, we put our garbage off on somebody else, so it makes it look like we're not.
Hmm.
But we're still producing, that carbon footprint is still there. It's just, we pass the buck to somebody else.
We're very
And
out of
what we
sight, out of
really
mind
need,
kind of individuals here.
exactly. So what we really need to do, what we should have done, is we should have, if we took this seriously, we should have funded think tanks. Like, the way that we got together and was like, hey, somebody quick, give us a vaccine, that should have been done for climate crisis years ago. Like, if you really want to change how cars are on the roads, figure out a way for affordable retrofitting for the
Hmm.
cars, to make it so, like, okay, instead of burning this, you'll burn this. Bring your vehicles in and we'll retrofit your car so it can run on that. And maybe it would be a cheaper system than gasoline. Like, we could have, I'm sure we could have had a think tank come up with something besides fossil fuels. But we're not doing that because we're not taking it seriously. And the reason we're not taking it seriously is because this government is essentially run like a company, and the companies that run the government don't want to lose, like, they don't want to change over to something else. They want to keep making all the money, because the creed is greed.
I can kind of see where you're coming from there. I definitely agree that the people in charge are essentially running it like a soulless corporation, and that's like the big thing that makes corporations. Whenever people try to humanize them, I always say, don't do it. They only care about your ATM card. They don't care about you. I
Exactly.
definitely feel like the government should care more about us than them. But with the more power that's been going to the government, absolute power corrupts absolutely. and in the steady rise of power up to there, where people can then take taxes off and buy their boats and buy their expensive houses and throw these lavish parties. It's literally a modern day precursor to the French Revolution with King Louis XVI. I don't know if you know that much about the French Revolution, but
Oh, yes.
80% of 80% of the people living in France at that time were below the second estate. They were the peasants, and they were absolutely being run out of any money that they could have made to fund these people's lavish lifestyle. And you're seeing that in certain aspects of Congress. Especially with a lot of the people that are showing up with cars, expensive outfits, multiple houses. And I understand you do need a home in the state that you're a representative from, as well as a place to stay in DC. I totally get that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the third vacation houses. I'm saying to the people who are taking private jets, but then lecturing us about not using hairspray or driving. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, also,
were you able to hear me? I heard my audio is kind of Rice Krispies right now.
We can hear you, but you are cracking. You're like kind of snap crackle popping.
Yes. I stole that from Ace. I didn't come up with that joke by myself.
One of the things that we probably should do to rectify that situation is the political one, not your audio. Is we could do things like
I'm trying to fix it. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry to cut you off. Just wanted to make sure my mic worked.
No, that's fine. We could do things like, I don't know, ban Congress people from being able to buy stocks so that we can stop their insider trading.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. I have a friend who, God bless him, at 24, he's about to buy his first house, and the money he is using on his down payment is exclusively from investing in the same stocks and companies that Nancy Pelosi is investing in.
Yep, that should be illegal.
Because he's able to see, hey, these people are investing in companies, and then they shoot up. You can follow the trend, and it's all public knowledge because they're Congress people. So I'd say before they make that illegal, go get the bag. But we can see that's what they're doing. They're insider trading. So, take advantage of that before someone smart like us gets in front and changes that.
Yeah. I think that there should be a rule that, like, no one in by the way, it's no, like, yes, I am a socialist, but I have no love for Joe Biden. To me, he's as bad as Reagan or worse. So Ace, by the way, because Ace was saying, someone give me those trends, I need money. By the way, that is, like he said, that is public knowledge. There are some apps that will actually just tell you what, like, people will go through and find out what Congress people are investing in. And there are apps where they'll, like, show you, like, this is what Pelosi just invested in, this is what so-and-so just invested in. And you can see, like, the amount of money that they throw when they throw like $100,000 at something, that's a stock you want to buy in. Because what they do, just to clarify for those who may not be aware, for example, when they found out the pandemic was happening, they are on, like, there was a committee where they all found out there was they had a briefing about that, the pandemic is here, it's on our doorstep, we are not prepared. And instead of urging the right parts of the government to do things to prepare to get ready, instead, everybody who left that meeting sold stocks in things that they knew were about to tank because those industries were going to shut down, and bought stock in things like PPE manufacturers, and they bought stock in, like, medical supply companies. Rather than giving the people a heads up, they bought stocks in things that they knew were about to have a huge growth, and they made a ton of money.
Of course.
So, and pharmaceutical companies, exactly. And
yes.
That's why we're saying, like, that should be, Nancy Pelosi did it even after that. For example, she knew that they were about to pass a bill that said, they knew that she was about to pass a bill giving Tesla exclusive rights for electric cars for like government cars. So what does she do? She tells her husband to invest in Tesla. That's insider trading.
Yes,
She
that's
knows it's going to go
very
up because she
illegal.
knows they're going to get a contract.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually it's terrible, it's egregious, and it should be completely illegal. Joe Biden has done the same thing, by the way. His entire family is corrupt. I can't
Anyone
think
who's
of
been in
anybody
government
in our
that long.
government that is not.
I said anybody in our government who's been like that for that long, like in
They're
facets of
so
government.
corrupt that they don't like. For example, the very thing that Trump got,
Hey Dan.
In, the comments are distracting me, so that's why it sounds like I'm a moron because I keep reading. Because I go to say something and then I read like 3 different comments. Anyway, because Dan and Ace are having like a comment-thon going on. Anywho, so you guys are nuts. Stop. Anyway, so the very same thing that Trump got what's the word? Now I can't think of the word.
Describe it to me.
Kicked out of office for a president. What's it called? Starts with an I.
Impeached.
Impeached. Thank you.
Impeached.
Why that word was gone from my head.
I got it.
Anyway,
my internet connection is going out as I'm trying to help you.
Okay. The very thing that Trump got impeached for, Biden did as well, except Biden actually said the words quid pro quo. Like, come on. and he was still somehow able to be elected. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So yeah.
Most popular president of all time, by the way.
Who, Biden?
Joe Biden. Most voted for president of all time with 80 million votes.
Okay, but here's the thing, though, that you have to take the historical precedence of the fact that people were voting from home. Remember, this was the first time that we had mail-in ballots, and it was national.
Mail-in ballots. Were mail-in ballots not available before this election?
It's state by state. This is what I mean. This is the first time it was national because of the pandemic. Had there not been a pandemic, and there weren't. Had there not been a pandemic, a lot of people wouldn't have voted from home. When people physically go to vote, it tends to it would have been different. Yeah, no, I know. Look, AC Facey, he said Nevada had mail-in ballots for decades. Yeah, there are, again, it was state by state. Some states have had mail-in ballots. Some states tried to ban mail-in ballots. So it's a state by state thing. And this was the first time that on a national level, everybody got mail-in ballots. That's what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, and with this pandemic, that's definitely something that would have been brought up with us staying at home. Do you think that mail-in ballots are going to be affecting future elections? Do you think that mail-in ballots can go away since the pandemic? Like, say tomorrow, that's it, COVID evaporated, pandemic's over, whatever. 2024 comes around. Do you think that there's still going to be an emphasis on mail-in ballots, or do you think that states are going to be working to make sure that they can't be used? Because I do understand that most of them probably were legitimate, but it is really easy to falsify a mail-in ballot to vote for people that the census hasn't acknowledged as dead. It's like, there's a weakness in all voting systems. I'm not saying every single mail-in ballot is fraudulent. I'm not saying everyone was completely legit. But do you think that it will affect the long term of the United States elections and security of elections with mail-in ballots continuing? Or do you think that after COVID goes away, that's it? Certain states are going to say, that's it, no more mail-in ballots, that's it? Or do you think the federal government will step in and do something?
I think that's a 2-pronged question. Because
kind of is. So digest it a little bit. Let's talk about it.
One version of it is basically you saying, do I think, say for 2024, hopefully we'll have come closer to moving on from COVID by then. I don't think COVID's ever really going to go away. It's going to be like an annual thing. But hopefully we can get a better treatment for it. That's my hope. So let's say 2024, do I think mail-in ballots are going to affect that election? Like it'll be a mass mail-in ballot like we did this last time? No. The second part of that, I feel like, is a voter fraud thing. There's really not that much voter fraud from the people in our elections. The voter fraud is almost entirely from the parties. the political parties themselves. So it doesn't matter how we vote, whether we're mailing it in or we're putting it in a machine. If the people who are counting that machine are, if they're, you're putting people in there who are gonna flip the machines, we're not gonna have voter security. That's, so to me, that's the situation. Like the DNC was sued because they were cheating on in their own elections, not on the national level, but in their own elections. And
Mm-hmm.
the judges essentially said they're a private corporation, they can do what they want.
They
So
shouldn't.
that's the problem.
Anything involved with politics going into how like influence of like the free world should not be a private corporation, should not have those kind of shields. Now that you brought that up, that's definitely something to where like if it's a DNC or RNC, they should not have that kind of protection, considering they're going to be putting people up and cheating out like, you know, the voter. I just want you to elaborate on what you said earlier. You said that most of the fraudulent votes are coming from the political parties and not from the people. Could you just elaborate on that?
Well, not fraudulent votes. So what I'm saying is like
Mm-hmm.
most of the time there's this myth that like there are these tons of people who are committing voter fraud. That's not the case. Most of the voter fraud is not individuals trying to say double vote or triple vote or something. That's usually not where the voter fraud comes in. Where the voter fraud comes in is the actual counting of the real votes or the flipping of machines. Like it was proven that our machines are extremely vulnerable to a cyber attack. And
Yes.
they know this and they don't do anything about it. And so things like, for example, like let's say, let's go back to an old one like Bush and Clinton, right? Okay, let's say you go to vote and you click Bush, but when after you vote, and it'll print up a slip that tells you voted for Bush, but then it might flip like when the official tally goes in, the tally is what flips to Clinton. You never know because your piece of paper told you what you pushed. When your receipt, that tells you what you pushed. Meanwhile, the software on the count side flips your vote.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the actual voter fraud happens. It's not so much individuals coming up trying to fraud the system, it's the people who control the system controlling the system.
I'm trying to find like a way to say this without sounding like a high schooler, but like how do you know that? Like, is that proven through their studies? Is there ways that this is reported? Because there are plenty of people that vote for dead relatives. They brag about it online. There are people like there were tons of tweets that were put out of. I think there was one specifically. Someone was tweeting how they went to like multiple stations and voted for. I forget which candidate. I just remember seeing it in a compilation of voter fraud mishaps during the election. Just genuine. Like, how do you know that? Is that proven somehow? Like through a study,
Well,
or is this just conjecture?
no, it's proven. I don't have anything in front of
Mhm.
me right now because I didn't know we were going to talk about this, so I didn't like.
No worries. Yeah,
But
it's
there
very
are
seat of our
people.
pants here at Political Zoo.
Right. Sorry. Um, had I known, I would have like gotten articles. But anyway, no,
Mhm.
there are people who actually study our process, our election process.
Mhm.
There are audits of our systems, and those audits come back with. Now, here's the thing: I'm not saying it never happens. I'm saying very few. So, like
Mhm.
95% of the time, votes are just real votes. There are people now. First of all, like somebody says, like, "Oh, I did something on Twitter." Like on Twitter, they say, like, "Oh, I voted several times." They might just be bullshitting because they're on Twitter.
Mhm.
Also, if they did, they could be part of that 5%. Most of the time, that 5% gets caught. So I'm not saying like nobody ever does it. I'm saying it's rare and they tend to actually get caught. So it's not like there's just rampant voter fraud and nobody ever catches it. And there are, like I said, I don't have it in front of me, but there are actual reports. People actually do audit our system. And that's what the evidence leads to is that there aren't tons of people out here doing all of this. This is just like scaring tactics from Fox News trying to increase voter regulations. But what is scary, the reports do admit that the software that we use is extremely vulnerable. And the DNC and RNC know that. And so again, I'm mainly talking on I'm not talking necessarily on a national level. I'm mainly talking on, well, it is national, but like the primary. The primary is the number one way the Democratic Party cheats. Because it tends to be like with the Republicans, like with the RNC, whoever wins the primary, they go all the way. With the Democratic Party, they control who can win the primary. They will literally cheat votes. Joe Biden has never won a single state, like a single delegate, until South Carolina. And in South Carolina, all of a sudden, he got tons. He still would have lost. The DNC has cheated the last several elections. There is tons of evidence for that. And the way that they cheat is they flip the votes. So it doesn't matter. Like you will see people will show up, like, for example, a caucus. People will show up and they'll be like, this many people were here, this many people were there, this many people were there. And then people will write it down and they'll turn those numbers in. And then the DNC will report completely different numbers. And those people were finally starting to come on TV and say, no, we reported these numbers. Now all of a sudden we're hearing these numbers. Those aren't the numbers that we had. So that's what I mean. Like, I'm speaking specifically for the DNC because I know for a fact that they cheat, especially in their primary.
Yes, I remember the whole Bernie Sanders thing was the big bring into the public focus that the DNC does manipulate votes, even if you knew already. But like to the common person, they know now, like, oh, DNC puts who they want in charge. That's kind of what it is.
Yep. They actually do. And that was the is it? I feel like everything's freezing every now and then. There we go.
I was going to say, okay, it's not just me then.
No, it is, because I'm like, why is nothing moving? Okay.
I was going to say, like, I just got a new laptop. What the heck?
So yeah, they absolutely choose who they want it to be. So
does this mean I can pick my nose and not get caught?
No, you would, because most likely what would happen is it would be frozen on you picking your nose.
Oh, great. So. Awesome. That's what I need circulating. Get some drama, you know, people follow my Twitter. That's an awesome point, though. Thank you for bringing that up about the software of the elections. I definitely agree. And I know I study a lot of cybersecurity in college, and growing up, technology has always been an interest of mine. And knowing the physical damage you can do with cyber attacks, as well as, you know, the infrastructure damage with, you know, not just, you know, the breaking of pipes, but personnel and, you know, getting elections and stuff. That's definitely something where it would have to be analog only. Like, say I was like supreme ruler of the United States, all elections, in my opinion, should be putting a piece of paper into a box and everything manually counted with auditors in front of them to make sure no one cheats.
Yes, I agree with you.
Old school. And like and yes, it has to be old school. And I understand the convenience of it, and I understand the sheer volume of people now and how it would take multiple days in order to count those votes. I don't care. It would, you know, the excitement of election night would last a couple of days. It'd be great. Let's just do that.
Honestly,
you know what I mean?
It wouldn't take days, because all that needs to happen, like, everybody wants to think that the United States is this huge country. I mean, physically we're huge, but like by people, again, we have almost, like, China's almost 3 times as big.
Well, also it's 180 million voters, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, we don't even have
a lot of people. That is biggest case scenario, but it's a lot.
It sounds like a lot, but then if you think about it, we have 50 states. And 50 states that can vote for president, and then 1 district, and I think 2 territories that are allowed to vote. So if what you do is, just like each state has a county, the counties collect the votes, then the states, like the counties count the votes, then the states count the votes, then you collect the states. That could be done within 2 days, because you take something big and you just break it into smaller chunks, and then you just add it all up. That's not but I think that it should be counted right then. Also, a lot of votes are done. Most voting is done ahead of time. Most voting is not really done because a lot of people, like especially with the mail-in ballots, that was all way
Yes.
ahead of time.
I went to school with someone who lived in Florida, and that was back in 2016, and he voted in that federal election through a mail-in ballot from Massachusetts, which is where I went to school.
Right.
So like I do remember that like whole experience of him like having to mail it in, and it was like months in advance, and we had a bunch of people asking him like, "Are you sure? Like, is that what you want?" Because like people wanted to make sure, because once you cast your vote, you can't recall it. So we had a bunch of people on campus trying to sway him either way. It was really funny to have people walk him around.
Yeah, I've done that before. I've been in another
Yeah.
state and mailed in my ballot to the state that I was a resident of. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so those votes could be counted ahead of time. I say nothing wrong with counting ballots as they come in, just keeping a tally, you know, as long as it's accurate. And I feel like there needs to be like layers of security, you know.
Yes,
But I
I
honestly
agree with
think that
that.
it shouldn't be. I think we should just get rid of the DNC and the RNC altogether because they are as corrupt as possible to be corrupt, and especially the DNC. And I think that it should be just like each county can create its own committee that is nonpartisan, completely impartial, and counts all the votes. I think that's way more ethical and probably less corrupting than having like the DNC count their own votes, the RNC count their own votes, because that we've seen the fuckery that they're willing to do.
Yeah.
So a nonpartisan committee for each county, I think, is a better way to go.
I can agree with that. I think that the members of that committee, though, should definitely see like the impartial committee part. It should kind of be like jury duty, to where people get stuff in the mail saying, "Hey, you're summoned, and you're going to get screened when you come in." It's not like you're going to show up and I'm going to show up to count with like my MAGA hat and Reagan Bush T-shirt on, and I'm going to sit down, whatever. Like, you're going to be vetted. People are going to look at your internet history, not like, personal history, but like your social media presence, who you have said to support in the past, how big are you into politics, so that way we can make sure we have the most impartial group of people.
I mean, all you
there.
really have to do, you don't even have to do that. Just see how they're registered. Because most people say one thing. So just see how they're registered. And just make sure, like, I want to end the duopoly. I don't agree with this two-party system because both parties are corrupt and we see what's happening. Like, neither party are working for the people. They're just working to enrich their own lives. So I'm for getting rid of the duopoly and having multiple parties and having more options. I also like ranked choice voting, where instead of just voting for the one thing, your one choice, you get multiple choices. You're like, this is who I want first of all, but if I can't get that person, then I'll say this person. And I personally think that instead of it being like, this team is the one, if this team wins, so like the Democrats win, they get to pick their own vice president. No, it should be whoever comes in first as president, whoever comes in second as vice president. That way, maybe we get a Republican and a Democrat. They have to work together.
That's actually, it's funny you say that, because that's actually how elections used to be run. The first few elections were the runner-up would become vice president, and they ended up doing away with that because it got to the point where you would have a candidate who's viciously against the second candidate, like the person who wins, being at the second position of power, to where they will kick and scream and undermine and bite and claw any step of the way to try to get certain policies through, to where they said we can't do this because of that like issue. Like, I see where you're coming from. I agree with ranked voting.
Thing, but in Congress, it's the same thing. But at least that way it was a more fair electoral process because those were the two candidates the people voted for. I didn't vote for Kamala Harris. Yeah. She could end up being president. She got exactly the same number of delegates that you and I did.
Yes. I remember that. I remember her being very unpopular. And
She's
I feel like
extremely
Biden would
unpopular,
have,
and
yeah, and I
so
feel like Biden made a misstep by bringing in Kamala Harris. I feel like if he brought in Tulsi Gabbard, she would have
Biden
brought
didn't
in a
bring in
lot of
Kamala Harris.
people.
Do you think that Biden had any control over who his vice presidential candidate would be? If
Oh, I don't
Biden
think he
had
has
any
control
say,
over anybody or
he had
anything,
no
to be
control over
honest. I
anything.
think he's just kinda he's like the
He's
Queen
just
of
a
England. He's a
stand-in for the
figurehead for who's really in
Democratic
charge.
Party. Like the DNC
Mhm.
only picked him because he was the only one that could go up against Bernie that they thought they could feasibly use him to cheat against Bernie because they knew Pete Buttigieg wasn't going to win. He didn't pick Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris was handpicked by Hillary Clinton. Um, the person that if Biden was able to pick his vice president, he would have picked Amy Klobuchar. That's who
Interesting.
he would have picked.
Has he gone on record to say that?
Yeah, people would during the primary. People asked him who he liked. He said Amy Klobuchar, and she is the most
Mm.
like him. And if you go back and watch the primary, the debates, you'll notice that like she never attacked him, and he never went after her. So it was like a mutual thing, and she was one of the first people to drop out of the race and support him.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, if you paid attention to the primary, you'd realize he would have picked Klobuchar. He never had a choice.
Mm-hmm.
I knew long before he actually stole the committee, I knew that if they actually put him in place, that Kamala was going to be number 2, even though she'd already dropped out at the time, because the DNC is controlled by the Clintons and Obama. Obama is a little more than a figurehead, but it's pretty much like he comes in to for crowd control, basically, to calm people down and get them to stand in line. But the Clintons are the ones who actually run the show. Hillary wanted to win. She couldn't win. Her replacement was Kamala. And if Kamala couldn't get in, they were going to get her in any kind of way. And that's why she's vice president. And
Now,
I don't
why do you
think
think that
Biden is going
is?
to finish his term.
I genuinely don't think that either. Why is Kamala Harris so popular among these elites?
Because she's a cop. Because she's just like them. She will do. Okay, so she is a notorious flip-flopper. She will do and say whatever they need her to say. They said, hey, go out on the campaign and we need you to sound exactly like Bernie to get all the progressives to vote for you. Problem is, progressives could smell her, and we knew she wasn't legit, so it didn't work. So then they were like, okay, pivot. So she pivoted. She will do the full tap dance. Everything that they want her to do, she will do it. She is under, they've got her exactly where they want her. She is perfect for them. That's why she is the darling. Plus, they were like, not leftist, Democrats. Basically, the Democratic Party right now is the Republican Party of the 80s, but with social cloaking. So in other words, they don't even necessarily believe in the social practices that they say that they believe in. They just, for example, they're like, oh, it's terrible that we're bombing all these countries. So let's paint a rainbow flag over it. That's basically the Democratic Party. They don't actually care about the LGBT community. They just paint a rainbow flag on it and then go, ooh, it's Pride Month. Buy things that have rainbows on it. And then everybody's happy now. We're not gonna
Let's
pass
put
any
BLM stickers
legislation. We're
on
not gonna do
missiles.
anything.
Let's put BLM stickers on missiles because that shows we're progressive.
Literally, it's nothing more than performative theater. So that's what the Democratic Party has become. They don't actually believe in these social programs. It's just that those social programs or those social issues are part of the Democratic platform, but the actual politicians have moved so far right, they don't actually believe in it. Plus, there's no money in it because the people who fund the Democratic Party also fund the Republican Party. That's why nothing gets done, because they're paid to not do anything that's going to fundamentally help us. The only legislation, for example, when it came time to stimulus, we got $1,200, but corporations got billions. In the first stimulus check, they gave money to the like the Carnival cruises, not just Carnival, but like the cruise lines, those cruise lines don't even pay taxes in the US. They fly
Mm-hmm.
their flag in other countries so that they can avoid paying our taxes, but somehow we had to bail them out. No, go to the countries that you fly your flag for, ask them for money. Why are we giving you
Yes,
money?
I wholeheartedly agree with that. And on that subject too, there were a lot of things in those bills. I remember it going back and forth where it would try to go through and someone in the Republican Party would find something disingenuous, so they would try to wipe that out. But then some of the Democrats would see that like something the Republicans put in was disingenuous. It was this back and forth where people were trying so hard to like squeeze any money out of it toward the policies and programs that they wanted. One of the biggest points I saw was that we got $1,200 like per person that had like dependents, and in Israel, each family, like the Israeli government, got enough money to give 5 grand to every single family
Mm-hmm.
in in their country. What makes them more important than us to keep ourselves afloat? The whole like 10 billion to Pakistan for gender studies. This isn't me saying I'm against gender studies. It's me going, do you really think that's not going to the nuclear program?
Oh,
Do you think that like
they're
that's genuinely what that's going to go for? Like really?
yeah, there are all kinds of things that like I think it's hilarious that like we're funding Israel, who like they're I have lots of issues with Israel, but
Oh yeah, me too.
Israel
I'm
is
not
a
a fan.
nation that has healthcare. We can't get healthcare here that's affordable, and we have horrible outcomes. We're like 37th in the world for healthcare outcomes. Meanwhile, we have the most expensive healthcare system. All the other developed nations have healthcare. We're giving money to those nations that are able to afford healthcare for their citizens, but then we have the nerve to turn around and say we can't afford healthcare for ourselves. We have our
Yeah.
priorities completely screwed up.
Oh yeah, the priorities of giving money to other countries that we would, and like, and not to put it just in dollars and cents, but there's no return on investment there, and the return on investment isn't money. It's improvement of the quality of life in our country and of the world. And I understand like we want to help everybody out, but we have our own people we need to take care of, and I feel like we need to be taken care of first before we try to reach out another hand. Like, are you
I
going to
mean,
go up to a family that needs money and needs certain programs subsidized for an expensive operation and say, listen, I know you need this, but we're really good friends with Israel. We really need to give them this money. Are you going to be able to go up to them and personally say that? It's hurting people on the ground level. And these people who are up on the penthouse don't really see that.
no, they see that because the other thing that is not that tends not to be exposed is a lot of times when we give other countries money, it's very much a quid pro quo thing. Like we give these other
Mm-hmm.
countries money to do this one thing, right? Those countries,
Yeah.
the people in Congress might have relatives or they themselves might be invested in companies that are in those very countries. So now they get money from the US. They take the money, no, they get money from the US and then
Oh, we
they
aren't?
turn around and help to invest in the companies. For example, Burisma. That's this whole situation. The US government was giving Ukraine money for the US government was giving Ukraine money, and of course the second I do that you come back. The second I'm like,
So
oh,
can you
she's
do
okay.
what?
I went like you disappeared, so I was like, okay, instead of showing a blank screen, I would just show show me. The second I go
I'm
on
sorry. I'm
just
trying to
mute, you
figure it out
pop
because
right
I'm
back
it's
in.
still frozen to me on my end. Like it's you and me staring at each other
No, it's
for
not
me.
frozen on my end.
Oh, okay, so it's
And
probably just
Ace
my
is dying
connection.
of laughter. She
Of
might pass
course,
out. I
it's
don't know if
funny.
we can add her because I think she's gonna pass out because she's laughing so hard. Anywho, so no, we're not frozen on my end. Um,
All right, let
so
me
like that,
then.
what Burisma was is there's a company named Burisma that was in the Ukraine. U.S. was giving money to Ukraine. Ukraine was giving it had there was a Ukrainian company called
There we
Burisma
go.
that had Joe Biden's son on the board, okay, now like your internet just hates you. I'm sorry. But it's like
Hold
you
on.
have Max Hedron head. It's so
Yes, I
weird.
saw. I just turned my Haps like app on my phone on to be able to at least see what we look like. And as soon as I did that, my face just morphed.
Yeah. I think you made your internet worse by doing it.
I just disabled. I'm going off data. Okay, I see you now.
Either that or Joe Biden really doesn't like us talking like
I'm
this.
not a lizard person. I swear it's the computer. It's not me. I mastered shapeshifting when I was 5. I don't mess up like this. I'm professional. I got the blazer and everything. I'm a scroll, dude. I wish I was a scroll. Those are sick.
Okay,
I wish, bro. I would shapeshift into Reed Richards. That's awesome.
I was asking AC Facey if she's ready to join. So
I mean, I can join y'all, but I'm not exactly familiar with what it is y'all are discussing. So, you know, I'll just be the comedic relief.
There she is.
Hi, Ace. Welcome.
Face to face.
Hello.
There you go. Thanks for coming on my show, Ace. For those who weren't here at the beginning, we welcome Ace, VOP veteran, as well as our scheduling manager. Thank you for showing up, Ace. I really appreciate these two lovely ladies being on my show tonight.
Thanks for having me.
So, AC Facey, I know you've heard every single thing that we've said.
Mm-hmm. Are you looking for input? My only thoughts was the minute that y'all started bringing up Kamala, my only response was fuck Kamala. She's definitely, like you were saying earlier, she's perfect for them. She's a police officer. She knows how to follow orders. That's why she was a perfect candidate. And she knows how to do the right song and dance when requested in order to give them exactly what they want, which is why, and I'm going to get criticized and bashed by a lot of people for this, but I'm half black and I give 2 fucks. Way too many people in the black community are all for Kamala because they see her perfect song and dance. She plays the I'm black when it's appropriate, but they fail to realize that Kamala, just like Biden, is a huge reason why our incarceration population is it's a large chunk of the black community. Because she had no problem arresting her own people under false pretenses and laws that were put there to particularly incarcerate us.
I don't know what percentage of the black community you're talking about. It must not be the voting part because that heifer got less than 1% of the black vote.
No, that is definitely probably the part of it that said, no, I don't vote, so I'm not voting this year.
Yeah, it's the non-voting part because she couldn't, like, she was almost tied with Pete Buttigieg. I think she got like a little bit more of the black vote than he did, which is 1%. He got 0%. She got like 1%. Yeah.
You seem like you know off the top of your head who got.
And I'm 100. Well, I'm not 100% black, but still, I'm not 50-50. I'm not half white, is what I'm saying. And my whole black ass was like 100% no.
Basically, what she's trying to say is she's just light skinned, but she's still black, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the mixed one, and I'm darker than her.
I'm just really light skinned. Like I went to the polls. You know, I do all that. Totally, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Poor guy. He's like, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just, you know, French. You know, there's a couple of them in there. Do you know who, off the top of your head, got the most black votes in the Democratic primary?
Sure, it went by age. If you were below 45, it went almost. It was like 80% to Bernie Sanders. Above 45, it was like 80% to Joe Biden.
Interesting.
It was almost entirely by age. Like Generation Z, not having it with all the other candidates. Generation X was split. And millennials all went with Bernie.
Interesting. It's crazy to see when you have like the age differentiator as well as like location and things, what people will do based on what they experience in their lifetimes.
Yeah, the interesting thing was if you go by all the demographics, the only demographics that Bernie really lost were above 45 and predominantly white people. But like all the other races were all in for Bernie. He pretty much had the Latino vote across the board, even above 45. But blacks and whites were almost identical, except a few more whites. I think it was white women who didn't, who weren't on Bernie's side. But pretty much everybody else was all in for Bernie, which is why it is laughable that Biden won. Biden literally
I
came
thought it
in
was
fifth
laughable. All right,
place
but
in the first couple of and like the first 3 states, he came in like fifth place, and somehow that was enough. Coming in first place by a narrow margin in the fourth state was enough to somehow get him the entire thing. Nope, the numbers don't work.
do you think that Bernie Sanders will be around next election, or do you think he's either going to retire or pass away?
Ouch.
I mean, like, not to be like, I don't know how other way to say
Bernie's
it, but like the
death
man's
date?
old. It's the same thing with Trump, and like I'm someone who's got on record to say I liked Trump during his time in office. When he's saying I'm coming back in 2024, I'm kind of I don't know, dude. Like you're old. Like these people are old. Number one, I don't think. I think at 65, you should forcibly have to retire from politics. I feel like at that, like if you're older than 65, you shouldn't be in charge of the free world because you just, if being hired at 70 is difficult because of like different skill sets and different like ways of thinking, and as well as like not being as sharp as you used to in like modern workplaces, why can't we enforce that in the government? Like why are the leaders of the free world in our government have to, like, why are they this old? All the people that hold the biggest power in our country were all born in the 40s and 50s. These are people that don't know our struggles as like younger people. So like I definitely think that like in both sides too. Like I'm not gonna make an exception if Trump goes for it in 2024, but like I said, like everyone's old. Do you think that there's going to be another election where these people are going to be able to hold out? Do you think Trump's going to be able to make it? I feel like Trump is going to be able to make it 2024 just like based on how he lives, but I don't think he's going to. I don't know. Like I would hesitate voting for him depending on who his opponent is, based on just age and sharpness. And when you're 65, you're not going to be as like strong as a leader as you would have been if you were like 30, 40, 50,
There's a guy on TikTok who brought this very thing up. Like, think of it from a black perspective. The people who are in charge now were born during Jim Crow. Maybe not the best idea. Also, think of it like this. Like, you're in your 70s, 80s, 90s, and you're making, whether you're in the judicial, the executive, or the legislative branch, you are making decisions that are not even going to impact you because you'll be dead by the time they actually come to fruition. So why are we letting old people who are going to be dead by the time these policies actually do anything? Why are we letting them set the precedent for the future for people who are just now coming into the political arena? So I think that since there are age minimums, there should be age maximums. You have to be at least 35 to run for president. You should be, like, I figure, like you said, 65. The maximum should be 65 for 2 reasons. One, because it's the retirement age. You should not be able to work in government beyond the retirement age. At retirement age, you are forced to retire, like everybody else. I also think that and also that gives you 30 years. If you can't make a difference in 30 years, you weren't good at it. Just let it go.
There you go. Yep. I couldn't agree with you more. That's definitely a great point against that.
And then secondly, this doesn't really have to do, it's kind of different, but like while we're amending government, I also don't think that the Supreme Court should be a lifetime thing. I don't think that they should be appointed by the president. I think they should be voted in. Again, like, let the people decide. We're supposed to be a democracy. Why aren't we voting for the highest court in the land? Also, I think that as far as like Congress, you should be making the minimum wage for your district.
Yes. I don't think minimum. I think median
or median
wage. I think median, only because so that way the average doesn't, because averages can kind of offset, like, if you have a lot of people that make a lot and you have a ton of people that make a low, it'll be able to sway that number. Median gets it right in the middle. I think I agree with that the person, depending on what state you are a representative or a senator from, you should be making median income of that state. So that way, if you want to raise your income legally, you're going to have to do it for everybody else in your state.
Everybody. Yep. They keep giving themselves raises, but refuse to raise the minimum wage, which has been stagnant for over 2 decades. Meanwhile, every single year, in fact, sometimes multiple times a year, the rates of everything goes up.
Yes.
The rates of gas, the rates of like groceries, the rates of housing. This is going up, 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 up. Meanwhile, minimum wage doesn't. So their salary should be tied to the wages of the people.
See, yes, I agree with tying it to the wages of the people. Some of those things, though, are outside of the control of the government, to where, like, I don't think that should affect minimum wage so much. I feel like food and necessities should be something that influences minimum wage discussion. Like, if a loaf of bread is $10, I feel like the minimum wage should be more than $10. You know what I mean? Exactly. Like, if it's something that, like, if it's a living thing, houses, it's really tricky because, and I've mentioned it on this show before, we have this investment company called BlackRock who's going around scooping up all these houses and then selling them back at exorbitant rates. They are kind of artificially pushing up a lot of the housing values, as well as when you have housing markets like, location, sparsity of, people around, if your job, there's a lot that goes into those things, to where, like, I feel like just a blanket of, let's just raise the minimum wage when prices go up. It's just, I don't feel like that's the answer for it, because, a lot of things happen. But like I said, if it's necessity things, if it's, like bread and stuff, I definitely agree that it should go up. What am I playing?
No, she's not talking to you.
Not you. I'm going to disagree on the housing point, though.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason why I'm not speaking in housing in terms of buying a house, but at least from the housing point of view of rental. When it comes to people who are renting apartments and renting homes, they can't do so by themselves. It used to be that you could get out of high school, you could go get a job doing starter wages, whether it's flipping burgers or whatever the case could be, and you could afford a 1-bedroom apartment by yourself and still have the means in which to live, buy food, your gas, make your car payment, your bills, so forth and so on. You can't do that anymore. Coming out and getting a job at McDonald's flipping burgers while you make your way through college or whatever the case may be, you have to have somebody living with you, or you end up on government assistance, which everybody likes to gripe and complain about the people on government assistance, but they don't have a choice. And going off the standpoint of a single mother of 2, I cannot afford a 2-bedroom apartment because I have to have 2 bedrooms. I got kids, and still afford the food and afford all my bills, whatever it is that is absolutely necessary for us to survive by myself. I have a little bit of government assistance, but even then, it's not enough that I still make it. I'm so far behind on bills, it's ridiculous trying to just make sure we have the necessities. That shouldn't be the case for anybody, whether they're a single parent, they are just a single individual, or it's a joint household. They have it set up to where you have to have a 2-income household to survive. But they also set it up where if you need the assistance, guess what? You can't have 2 incomes. You got to get rid of somebody. They literally set you up for failure. So if you can't go and work McDonald's and be by yourself in an apartment that's a 1-bedroom or a studio or whatever the case may be, then you're clearly not getting paid enough minimum wage.
I can definitely respect that. I totally understand. And that is something that I agree with, that you should be able to graduate high school, get an entry-level job, and be able to have a 1-bedroom apartment.
Yep.
I think that a really big factor that plays into why
in the union right now.
Yeah, I know. I remember seeing that. I saw that article a couple weeks ago, right? It's like minimum wage can't afford any apartments without a roommate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, without multiple roommates, but like housing in the US, in order to afford housing where I live, you would have to make $40 an hour to afford basic housing by yourself. and the minimum wage in my state is $14 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Little off, little bit. I personally, my method of fixing that is to, instead of raising the minimum wage, you put a maximum cap. You say the highest person in a company cannot make more than 1,000 times what the lowest person in a company makes. Everybody gets a raise. Because right now, you won't believe the amounts of money that CEOs are making over the lowest person. It is insane. And the CEO is not working more hours than you are. They're not worth more than you. Their time is not worth more than you. Your labor, you deserve to be paid for that. And basically, corporations are stealing your labor. It's akin to slavery, because you're like, oh, you can leave. Sure, you can leave this corporation and go work for another corporation. It's the same thing.
Oh yeah, I am so against corporations that I would really rather the mom and pop. And I was actually going to bring that up with Ace, and I'm glad you segued into it. When she said that, like, you know, people would go to flip burgers and McDonald's and whatever, and they can't afford the apartment. I feel like a lot of this sediment of, you know, can't working is because of these chains and corporations, to where once they got to the point of near monopoly, they made it so that way they can just charge lower salaries and be able to do that. I like that idea, though, of what you said of the 1,000 times more than your lowest employee. I really like that idea. And that's definitely something I'm going to add to my repertoire of things I want to fix if I ever become supreme ruler of the free world, because that is a really good idea. And I definitely agree with that. It's an awesome point. Is like they shouldn't make more than 1,000 times what the person at the bottom makes, then everyone's going to get a raise.
And you don't even have to worry about raising the minimum wage, because
that's so good. Amazon. Yeah, because exactly. Yeah, no,
think of how much money Jeff Bezos makes. If you were to put that rule into effect right now, everybody at Amazon would be a millionaire. That's how much he makes.
Wow, yeah, that's right. You know, that's like, because I always look for ways to solve issues by appealing and compromising to both sides. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to raise minimum wage and get like a certain amount of people mad, then having those negative effects happen. I don't want to not raise it and then have the negative effects that continue to go on. That's an awesome middle ground that'll be able to work itself out within the private sector, but having that public sector of government to be able to help the people. That's a really good idea, and something I definitely agree with is that the highest paid employee should not make more than 1,000 times the lowest paid. That's really good. I applaud you for that. That's awesome.
That would put a cap on how much the company is allowed to earn. The highest person could still make tons of money, but the lowest people, because here's the deal, the highest person's not going to make anything if those lowest people don't do their job.
So I actually just realized the loophole, and this is a loophole that people use today too. This is why CEOs don't pay any taxes. Do you know the salary of Mark Zuckerberg and Jeffrey Bezos?
Oh, you mean when they, instead of actually taking their money, they just reinvest it into the company and pretend like they didn't get a paycheck?
Well, no. So what they do, they only take a salary of $1.
Yeah,
they only take $1 every year, but like they increase the value of their company and then they liquidate stock according to that. That would be the loophole out of that. You know what I mean?
Well,
where they would say, like, listen, I'm only making $1.
To the legislation that all income by those any money coming from the business, so, or you could just say like the profit, but like basically you could put it in there, like, to close that loophole, that at any time if they liquidate stock, because what they'll do is like they'll sit there and they'll go, okay, you know, instead of making, $20 million now, they'll just take out, 10 years from now, they'll just liquidate and take out like $500 million. Okay, the minute you take out that $500 million, now everybody in your company is worth, you can't make more than that's the limit for the 10,000. So basically I would make it so that like you evaluate at what they would be earning. So you can't do that I make $1 bullshit. Like, no. Whatever you take home, however you pay your bills, that you're getting money from this company, that's what counts. You can liquidate. But what if it's it can be stairs, whatever. However you pay your bills, we're counting that money.
But like, say it's like a personal business venture. Say like Yeah, I don't know if this is insider trading. Correct me if it is. But say like, I buy stock in this company and then I either join this like big investment board or I become essentially one of the owners of the company, and then the value goes up and then I sell the stock value. Would that now count toward that $1,000 salary cap? Oh, 1,000 times salary cap, excuse me.
If you're the CEO of a company and you join the board of a different company, is that what you're saying?
Kind of like I'm saying like, what if you go into a company like you had a previously established personal trade, like say like I become CEO of Drew Enterprises, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have a bunch of stock from Drew Enterprises, and it was like a personal thing, and then I buy another company, I buy Jackie Enterprises and become part of its like CEO board members, right? Not like CEO board, but like, like part of a higher member of a board. And say through my working with your company, I improve the value of stocks and then I liquidate it. Would that count toward that salary?
Yes.
I'm just trying to make sure that like there's nothing unrelated that hits that. Because like say I become a CEO of a really
any money you take. So here's what I mean. Like, let's say, because usually what they do is they do this like under an umbrella corporation, right? So the umbrella corporation, if you have like an umbrella corporation and you have like say 5 corporations under you, whatever you make for the collective of those 5 corporations, all 5 of those corporations, that 1,000% counts for whatever you make total. So whatever money goes into your bank account, however you want to put it there, wherever you want to get it from, we're counting that. And then, yes, okay. I know Resident Evil is a reference. Yeah. Not the
I'm sorry,
same,
I had to put that away in my mind when you said Umbrella Corporation too.
I know, everybody does that. Not
That's literally all I heard in my head was Resident Evil.
Help me, Leon, regulate taxes.
Not the same thing. But so for all 5 companies that you're involved in, again, however money hits your personal checking account, whatever amount that is, all 5 of those companies, you've got the $1,000% cap on that, on that number. So for all 5 companies.
Even if you have like other personal business ventures, like there's a specific example I'm using here, and it's in my head. I'm just trying to like iron out any loopholes in this. So like say I become, I'm CEO of Drew Enterprises and I make a decent amount of money, and then I take out a wall in my house and I find out that the first ever Spider-Man comic was used as insulation, and I go to an auction and I sell it, and it makes me like $1 million because it was in super good condition. Do I have to raise the wages of all my employees because I went out on a personal business venture that hit me, like that I got a lot of money from just because I'm a CEO?
Okay, so then the question is, if you find that Spider-Man comic, right, and you personally sell it yourself and you get that $1 million, then no. But
yeah,
if you got that Spider-Man comic not because you found it, but because you hired someone to find it, yes, that counts. The minute somebody is paid, the minute somebody is under you, it counts.
So if an employee is involved in a transaction that makes me money, or in a process that eventually in the long term makes me money, is what you're saying?
There it is.
Okay.
If I'm
just trying to figure it out because
you sell your own car, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a company car, that's attached to the company. That's considered an asset for the company.
All right, I see what you're getting at. Okay, I just wanted to figure anything else out. You know what I mean? This is how we get good policies together with nice think tanks like this. That's awesome. So while we're on the topic of, we were talking about healthcare a little bit earlier, and we're talking about money and all that fun stuff. A very big issue that happened this week that I was all over Twitter and I was all over everything about it. Really excited to bring it up this week. Have you heard about the healthcare workers over in New York?
I have not. I had a busy week of leaving FHL, so I've been kind of out of the political sphere.
No worries.
Yeah.
I'll bring you in. So this is something that's a little polarizing, and I can see the arguments on both sides, and I do have my argument. But in the state of New York this week, if you are a healthcare worker and you have not gotten the vaccine for COVID, you were effectively fired last Tuesday, I believe it was, and you were replaced with an equally medically qualified member of the National Guard.
What?
Yes, that's what's happening in New York right now.
That is all fucked up.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one who thinks that, because imagine, like, yeah, because the way forward through this is military-run hospitals and infrastructure like that. But yeah, that is currently what's going on in New York. If you did not get that vaccine, you have to say goodbye to your career and let someone from the military take it over.
Didn't the Democrats say they wanted to vote in Joe Biden because they didn't want fascism?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is sounding pretty fascist to me right now.
Yes, get the jab, or the military is going to come in and replace your job.
Workers with the military.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Are you kidding me? Like, that's insane.
It's not enough to have militarized police. Now we have to have militarized hospitals.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all the way around fucked up. Also,
now just to throw in a devil's an advocate, like, right, just to throw in this argument, like, shouldn't they deserve it because they didn't get this vaccine that's saving lives? Wouldn't you want your healthcare worker, in case you needed to go to the hospital, to be vaccinated from COVID?
No, you know why? Because I'm not pro-vaccine mandate. You know how Democrats have the whole "your body, your choice"? I'm not a hypocrite. Mm-hmm. Your body, your choice.
Ditto. So, my body, my choice.
Here's the thing: whether they're vaccinated or not, are they healthcare professionals? Are they maintaining social distancing and wearing the proper PPE? Why don't we make sure they have that instead of mandating vaccines? Why don't we make sure every single hospital has the proper PPE? They had to deal with that for a full year before the vaccine even came out. If they were able to do that and they were able to get through it, then why all of a sudden do they need to be vaccinated?
These people were hailed as heroes a year ago, kind of like unparalleled champions. Thank you for doing everything you're doing. And now it's, you're not getting the vaccine, get out, and the army will come in and take over.
That is all the bullshit. Also, these army, so I know the army has to be vaccinated because they're forced to be. But here's my question. When these military people are taking over their jobs, are they getting not only their military pay, but also the pay for the people that they're replacing? Because that's the only thing that's fair. They're doing the job of, if they're a nurse or a doctor, they're doing that doctor or nurse job. They should not be getting the shitty military pay that they were getting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, standard military pay, fuck that. That should be illegal. I'm against this on two different levels. You're screwing over the military and you're screwing over, like, this is...
So wait a minute. So then who's getting that money? The hospital gets to keep that money?
Yeah. The hospital. That's why the hospitals were probably in favor of this.
Let's not jump to conclusions on it. Because remember, it was a government decision. I don't think the hospitals could have refused. Let's not jump to this conclusions, because I don't know the answer to that question of if the people in the military will be getting their pay.
Okay, but here's
I can actually look that up really quick.
Any government decision, our government is run by corporations. Hospitals in the United States are corporations. I guarantee you, they influenced this decision.
They are private enterprises as well. I know that ambulances are also private entities.
Yes.
From working, I was really close to EMTs in college, and I knew a lot about the Brewster ambulance company and all that. Yeah, it could be that.
In the state of California, our governor sent people back to work prematurely, knowing it was premature, because the all the corporate restaurants came to him and said, we're losing too much money because we're paying people to stay at home. We don't care if they get sick or not. You have to send them back to work. So he opened up, knowing that it was too early to do so, because the corporations came and told him to. Our government is for sale. So I guarantee you that was not a healthcare decision. That was not based on healthcare. That was a corporate decision. I'm telling you, the healthcare industry went to the government and said, force them to get vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
And then that way, it's a win-win for them, because if they don't get vaccinated, now they get cheaper labor.
Well, shouldn't they want to get the vaccine if they're healthcare workers? Don't they want to not spread that around and infect people?
The vaccine doesn't prevent you from spreading it around, so there's no point.
It does.
That's why there's no point.
It doesn't stop you entirely, but it does decrease the rate of transmission.
It doesn't, because so the numbers from the United States have been fabricated. If you look to other countries like China, like Israel, and you look at their actual studies, the studies coming from them, remember, those two countries are actually more vaccinated than we are. A higher percentage of their population, and most of them have had the third shot. And their numbers say that as far as whether it's vaccinated or unvaccinated, the numbers of the spread, identical. The biggest thing for this vaccine is the personal, where it will prevent you from dying. That's what the vaccine does. It prevents you from dying from COVID. It doesn't prevent you from spreading COVID. It's almost identical. Vaccinated versus non-vaccinated.
Yes, I say the same exact thing. I'm not pro-vaccine. I'm just giving you guys some arguments to mull over.
I'm neither pro nor anti. I'm anti-mandate, because I believe your body, your choice. You don't want to get vaccinated. It doesn't matter why. Maybe it's a religious reason. Maybe you don't trust the vaccine. Whatever. I don't care why. Whatever reason, whether you want to get it or you don't, you should be allowed to choose what goes into your body. And that is crossing a line. Forcing people to do something like get a vaccine. That's different than wearing a mask. Wearing a mask is an external thing. It's not internal. But that's like forcing people to eat cheeseburgers. You have to eat a cheeseburger or you can't work at this establishment.
Yeah, even worse than the cheeseburger comparison's great, but it's even worse than the vaccine, because the vaccine edits your RNA, right? It has something to do where it gets into your genetics.
It's an mRNA. It doesn't edit. Well, I mean, technically, even foods you eat can edit your DNA. It's an mRNA vaccine, meaning that it works on the proteins. It doesn't alter you it doesn't alter your DNA any more than eating a cheeseburger would alter your DNA.
Yeah, I know the DNA. I was saying the RNA, because I know the RNA is what sends signals to other cells in your body and mandates repairs and things like that.
Ace's dog just lost her shit. I'm sorry, that was funny.
That's funny. No worries.
The insurgent went psycho. I apologize. And yes, she's insurgent. Her name is ISIS, so it works.
That's funny.
But see, an onion. This person, Onion Muffin, just said they don't force the flu shot. Why force the COVID vaccine? That's exactly the thing. If they're forcing this vaccine, they're going to force the next vaccine.
Yes. Imagine if there was a cure for cancer and they had to do all this kind of stuff to get you to take this cure for cancer.
But here's the thing, though. If there's a cure for cancer, if there's a cure for cancer is different, because that's a cure. You don't need that until you have it. But if there was a cancer vaccine and they force you to take a vaccine for cancer, it's okay, but you might not even get cancer.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's a cure, you don't need it until you've got it. Unless you have cancer, you wouldn't need the cure.
Yeah, I see. And when my dad got the vaccine, because my dad's he's 61, he's immunocompromised. He had multiple surgeries.
Sorry, your dad's only 61. I'm like, damn, you have to be young.
Oh, I'm 24.
Yep. Well, there you go.
Yeah. So he
sorry,
when the vaccine was offered to him, I was like, yes, absolutely, take it, because COVID will hit him a lot harder than it's going to hit someone like me. In my age bracket, it's a 99.997% survival rate, and the vaccine doesn't affect transmission to the point of notice. And my friend brought this up today, who I'm going to be having on next week. He told me that in Israel, they're the most vaccinated per capita country, yet they have the highest infection rate in the world of COVID.
Because now I do want to bring up the mask mandate.
Yes. Now I do want to bring up the death rate and all that, because the death rate does play a factor into it. Yeah, a bunch of people are going to get it, but how many people are going to die from it? That's the real important part. Everybody could have it, but if there's no one dying, is it really that deadly to begin with?
Well,
so, like, is the vaccine worth it if it's that way?
There are more factors than just the death rate, because the death rate is only the people who are going to die from it. You can have a disease and have long-term side effects that'll be with you for the rest of your life. That,
yes,
to me, that needs to be a factor as opposed to just how many people are going to die. From what I've seen, all of the research that, now I'm not saying I did the research. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a researcher. Okay. What I'm saying is, from the research that has been done worldwide, the number one factor in not whether or not you will get COVID, because anybody can get it, but whether or not you will survive it, whether it will be like, you can get COVID and be completely asymptomatic, or you can get it and it could end up being like a flu for you, or you can get it and end up dying. And the biggest determining factor that scientists have seen thus far is vitamin D levels. People with really low vitamin D levels are the ones who get it and die. And
that's the vitamin you get by going
D
outside in the sun, right?
Tend to be, you absorb it more in the sun. The best way to get it is to absorb it through the sun. You can also take a vitamin D supplement. But the vitamin D levels are like, the people who had high vitamin D levels are the ones who were asymptomatic. And the people who got it and it was kind of like the flu, they had average to low, like just barely low. But the people who were severely low were the people who were like died or almost died. And even the people, so I heard that, or like I read that, because again, there's studies about that. And then I've seen multiple studies about that. Not only that, you do know that you can speak, right? You're on camera. You can just say things.
I was just being nice and just putting in the comment.
She's interacting with people in the comments. I'm cool with that. Ace, could you actually entertain our audience with Jackie here? I just have to run upstairs. I want to kick my router, see if it helps me out.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, I'll be right back.
Jackie, it's just me and you. How does that make you feel?
What?
Nothing. That's how it makes you feel.
Oh, well, I was like, I legit couldn't hear you. I heard Jackie, and then.
Anywho. I wanted to chime in on something earlier, and I was waiting because you two were having a good discussion. One of the questions he asked was about, the whole whether or not a nurse should be vaccinated in order to take care of people. Well,
okay, real quick, remind me never to wear brown again, because it's just, I look almost naked. It's not good. Anywho, you were saying?
So like we were saying, the concept of my body, my choice. Yes. But then on top of it, it's the concept of, let's keep in mind that why should they have to take something to be healthier? When you go and you look at doctors and nurses across the world, they know cigarette smoking is bad for you, but there's still a lot of them that do it. Are you going to hold that against them and not let them treat you? Just like the concept of you're dying and on your deathbed, are you really going to stop a doctor from treating you and curing you because they have a tattoo on their neck? It's not going to stop you. You're in the middle of your death. Some people might, but the odds of how many are going to say no versus those that are going to say yes in order to continue living, that's going to be a significant difference. I'm just going to smack Dan later on. It'll be great, guys. Y'all don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
You might want to do that.
To the owner of VOP.
Okay, just so everybody knows, the reason why we keep tripping up is because he's online in the comments, like private comments, talking to us, and every now we can read it, and every now and then we'll actually be like, damn it, and it'll like catch us. So we're not acting crazy, okay? I mean, kind of, but
I mean, actually, it depends on the area. They have cut down in some areas. Now they haven't gotten to the point where they're actually firing you for being a smoker, but a lot of medical insurances will charge you for being a smoker, and they've made it to where I'm pretty sure it is every hospital, but I'm not positive because I don't go visit every hospital for a living. They do make it to where you cannot smoke within so many. No, I don't. I know. I'm failing. I'm slacking at life. You can't smoke within so many feet of the hospital. So if an employee is caught on ground smoking, they can be fired. That's the way that they get around firing them for smoking. But again, they're still smokers. I know plenty of doctors and nurses who are smokers. They just don't do it on the grounds because it's the bad example theory.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like being a medical worker. Okay, well, Drew came for a moment. Being a medical worker.
Am I here now? Can you see me?
You came in and then you dropped. So here you go. And
Oh my
what's
goodness.
happening? I don't know
That's when I
whether
thought I taught my
everybody
router
is
a lesson,
clicking
man.
to add you and then somebody else, like one person adds you and another person takes you off, or if Haps is just like, nope.
It
I'm
is
sorry,
the
it's a new
death
recording
penalty.
area. You
Like
wouldn't
resting- like,
believe what I had to do to get an
rejecting you.
Ethernet cable down here.
Onion, it is a death penalty. I am sentencing myself to my own death, but it's my choice, right? My body, my choice.
Here's the thing: when it comes to smoking, it's more than just your body, your choice, because
It
the
depends on
smoke
where you're smoking.
can affect other people. I'm all for. I say people can do whatever. What the hell, man? You keep coming.
I just show up for like 1 second.
He's playing whack-a-mole. Okay, see if you can get through.
Is it good?
You're good now.
Dan, what are you doing, dude? Come on, I'm trying to have a show here.
It's all Dan's fault, y'all.
Am I here? Can you see me? It's still frozen on my end.
Oh, look at that. Political zoo. Interesting.
That's me.
Interesting.
He's the curly hair one.